Television's Floki builds ships, worships the gods intensely, befriends Ragnar, and eventually searches for Iceland. Those traits look like a composite biography, yet only one named medieval person clearly anchors the character. Hrafna-Flóki Vilgerðarson supplies the name, the ravens, and the famous voyage toward Icelandic settlement. The shipbuilder, trickster, jealous friend, religious extremist, and visionary colonist come from less direct sources. Some belong to shared Viking Age practices, some resemble literary motifs, and others were created for serialized drama. The real question is therefore not which people were merged, but which evidence classes were made to resemble people. Begin with the strongest candidate, preserved not in contemporary voyage records, but in later Icelandic settlement tradition. Landnámabók, the Book of Settlements, survives in medieval versions compiled centuries after the initial colonization. It organizes claims about settlers, families, farms, and origins within Iceland's remembered social landscape. The work contains valuable traditions, although its genealogies and stories also served later communities explaining ownership and status. Within that record, Hrafna-Flóki becomes an early explorer who deliberately seeks the island. His nickname means Raven Floki, referring to birds used in the story to help locate land. Medieval navigation could draw upon experience, winds, swells, stars, coastal knowledge, and observations of birds. The specific Raven episode remains a literary account rather than a logbook written during the voyage. According to the tradition, Floki traveled with family members and companions rather than as an isolated adventurer. The party reached the West Fjords, where the landscape offered rich summer grazing but severe seasonal constraints. They neglected to prepare enough fodder, and their livestock suffered during winter. This practical failure matters because settlement required stored food, labor planning, animals, and knowledge of unfamiliar seasons. The story says Floki climbed a mountain, saw a fjord filled with drift ice, and named the land Iceland. Whether one person truly fixed that name through this moment cannot be independently demonstrated. Even so, the account gives television a memorable sequence of birds, ocean, ice, disappointment, and stubborn return. The historical tradition does not make Hrafna-Flóki Ragnar's eccentric friend or the architect of his war fleet. Those screen connections belong to a compressed chronology linking famous episodes through one ensemble. Hrafna-Flóki's voyage likely belongs to the later 9th century, during the developing Norse settlement of Iceland. On screen, Floki begins decades earlier and accumulates experiences across an implausibly extended historical canvas. Chronological compression alone prevents his story from functioning as one reconstructed life. Could another named shipwright have supplied the craft identity? No securely identified Viking Age master builder matches Floki's television biography. Scandinavian ship construction is instead visible through surviving vessels, tools, timbers, fastenings, and experimental archaeology. The Oseberg ship, buried in 834, displays extraordinary woodworking, but its individual designers remain unnamed. The Gokstad ship reveals another powerful combination of hull form, overlapping planks, iron rivets, and flexible construction. Later vessels from the Roskilde region demonstrate specialization among warships, cargo carriers, and smaller craft. These ships embody accumulated knowledge transmitted through working communities, not inventions credited to one famous genius. Timber selection required judgment about grain, curvature, strength, and how trunks could be split into durable planks. Ironworkers produced rivets, rope makers prepared rigging, and textile labor supplied costly woolen sails. A finished vessel therefore concentrated forests, farms, workshops, transport, food, credit, and coordinated human skill. Television gives that collective system a recognizable face by making Floki the indispensable builder. The choice dramatizes labor that heroic narratives often leave anonymous. Floki's craft identity should therefore be traced to material culture, not to an undocumented second biography. A different comparison arises from his name's resemblance to Loki, the ambiguous figure of Norse mythology. Loki is not a historical Viking Age person and cannot count as another biographical source. Medieval poems and Snorri Sturluson's later prose portray Loki through changing roles involving cunning, disruption, and catastrophe. The television character's laughter, agility, unpredictability, and social danger can evoke that literary figure. However, resemblance does not prove that every action encodes a specific myth. The spellings Floki and Loki are distinct, while Hrafna-Flóki already provides a genuine medieval name tradition. Visual and behavioral echoes function as characterization rather than hidden historical genealogy. This distinction prevents mythology from being mislabeled as eyewitness information about religious personalities. The screen Floki's intense pagan devotion creates another tempting search for a real priest. Pre-Christian Scandinavian ritual authority did not necessarily belong to a separate professional class resembling later clergy. Household heads, local leaders, rulers, and other participants could organize ceremonies in varied regional settings. Written descriptions largely come from Christian authors or later Icelandic literature, each carrying distance and interpretive problems. Archaeology identifies buildings, deposits, amulets, images, and landscapes that may illuminate practice without recording private belief. No named devotee emerges from that material as the template for Floki's theology. His hostility toward Christianity instead personalizes a broad and uneven historical process of encounter and conversion. Some Scandinavian elites adopted baptism for political, commercial, diplomatic, or sincerely religious reasons. Others resisted, combined practices, or moved through gradual changes poorly captured by surviving sources. Television concentrates these regional negotiations inside friendships, murders, betrayals, and arguments over divine favor. That creates dramatic stakes, but cannot reconstruct how one 9th century shipwright actually believed. The character's relationship with Ragnar offers the clearest evidence of invention. No early source pairs Hrafna-Flóki with Ragnar Lothbrok as companion, craftsman, critic, or confidant. Ragnar's own historicity is disputed because later narratives assemble deeds that may reflect several remembered leaders. Joining two uncertain biographies does not make their friendship more probable. It gives the series a durable contrast between restless curiosity and uncompromising attachment to inherited gods. Athelstan completes that fictional triangle by turning Christian contact into personal jealousy and intellectual competition. The emotional force comes from writing and performance, not a damaged page of missing Icelandic history. Another possible candidate is the broader population of early Icelandic settlers. Landnámabók names many families while archaeology confirms settlement beginning around the late 9th century. The tephra layer associated with an eruption around 871 provides an important chronological marker at settlement sites. Buildings, animal bones, tools, and environmental change reveal the material work of establishing farms. These traces show that colonization involved households, dependents, livestock, land claims, and rapid ecological consequences. Floki absorbs aspects of this collective experience, especially hope confronting scarcity and social division. Yet, combining a population's circumstances into one character differs from merging several identifiable people. No single settler can be securely assigned his screen disputes, leadership style, or religious project. The series also relocates settlement memory by making Floki's community a social experiment. That framework speaks to modern questions about utopia, authority, equality, and the return of violence. Medieval Iceland developed assemblies and law without a king, but it was not a classless refuge beyond coercion. Chieftaincies, households, property, feuds, and slavery shaped the society emerging there. Floki's fictional settlement converts those institutions into a concentrated moral test for familiar characters. Hrafna-Flóki's remembered, failed winter supplies the landscape, while later Icelandic history supplies pressures the drama rearranges. The result resembles a mosaic more than a stack of biographies. One tile is a named explorer from settlement literature. Another consists of anonymous shipbuilding communities recoverable through timber, rivets, sails, and hulls. Third draws upon later mythic portrayals of Loki without turning a deity into a historical craftsman. Further pieces come from conversion conflicts, Icelandic colonization, and the practical vulnerability of transplanted livestock. Modern screenwriting binds those materials with invented friendship, humor, grief, rivalry, and spiritual certainty. Composite label remains useful only if it includes traditions, social roles, and dramatic invention. Hrafna-Flóki is the sole named human prototype with a direct and substantial claim. Even his account requires caution because surviving settlement books post-date the voyage by generations. What discovery could sharpen the answer beyond this conclusion? A genuinely early text connecting Hrafna-Flóki to shipbuilding or known continental campaigns would transform the comparison. So would a reliable production statement naming additional medieval individuals deliberately used to construct the role. Neither possibility currently supplies historical proof within the narrative itself. Material evidence can deepen the craft background, but cannot identify the builder's personality. Mythological texts explain Loki's narrative qualities, not the private conduct of a mortal named Floki. The distinction makes the character more interesting because his parts come from different ways of knowing the past. Wooden hulls preserve skilled labor, manuscripts preserve selected memories, and drama supplies continuous human presence. Their merger allows forgotten collective work to stand beside a famous explorer's name. Television's Floki was not assembled from a hidden company of documented eccentrics. He combines Hrafna-Flóki with anonymous craft traditions, mythic suggestion, conversion history, and original characterization. The ravens belong to later settlement memory. The shipyard belongs to a society. The friendship with Ragnar belongs to television.